What's up, everybody? I am K. Marie.
I am Lou.
I'm Mary.
And we are
Murked in the Midwest.
Can you imagine a monster masquerading as a Marine? Today's case, we are going to be talking about Andrew Urdiales. Andrew Urdiales was born June 4th, 1964 in Chicago, Illinois.
Chi-town.
He was a serial killer, which you will come to find his story. Mr. Urdiales lived in Illinois his whole childhood. He had his family's life was his father, his mom, and he had a sister. They all lived together. Little is really known about his early childhood.
Yeah, the only thing that we really know is that, like, shortly before his 13th birthday, is that he beat the family dog to death with a baseball bat. But that's not even the worst part. And somehow, some way, he was able to convince his parents that the animal had been fatally injured in a fall.
Yeah, I don't know how he got away with that.
Yeah.
Because,
beat the dog with a bat.
literally beat that bitch with a bat.
I beat that.
It's something. So then we start to get into more detail of who he actually was. They were in the Dalton area of Illinois at this point, and he went to Thornton Ridge High School in Dalton, Illinois. It is said that he was definitely like an awkward kid. He had poor social skills, just really didn't fit in very much with anyone. He did have a few friends, but even with that, he still was considered awkward. After high school, he joined the United States Marine Corps, and he was in the Marines between 1984 to 1991, and he was stationed at the Pendleton base in California. He was in his career, even though with his awkwardness, and they had given him and coined him the Corporal Urinalysis.
Whatever.
For
whatever reason. I mean, we know that his name sounds like urinalysis, but we just don't know if there's more meaning to that.
I kind of feel like just the things that I've researched and found, it makes me think that there was more to it.
Yeah.
But even if it was just a harsh term to make fun of his last name.
Corporal Pee-Pee.
Corporal Pee-Pee. I mean, he is from Chicago. R. Kelly, he liked to pee on folks.
Oh my God.
Too soon.
But anyway, so he was in the military, in the Marines, and he did actually have a modicum of success. He rose from being just a regular soldier and got to the position where he was training other Marines. But because of his awkwardness and inability to communicate with others,
he couldn't even hold small talk, right?
No, he was weird from even going into a corner store and trying to just have a normal interaction to buy
hi, how are you?
Right.
Fine.
Just weird stuff. Like he just couldn't have a normal conversation to get through daily activities. So even though he did get promoted and he was training other Marines, he was quickly demoted because he could not handle the basics of just interacting with people. During his time, he did serve in Desert Storm. It is also said that, and this comes up later in what a psychologist did say about him. At first, it was thought that he joined the military because of this duty or patriotism, but later on, it was discovered that really he wanted to learn how to
kill,
defend himself and harm others.
Yes, basically how to kill.
Yes. So that is what we know about his life up until military
and
service.
Who Corporal PP, aka Andrew Urdiales, is.
Yes.
Alrighty, so for our first known victim, so all right, picture it. January 18th, 1986. It's a Saturday. It's 10:30 p.m. A security guard at a college, Saddleback College in California. He's kind of just like, ending his rounds, driving around, and he spotted a figure lying in the parking lot. And so it was a dark. First, he thought it was like a mannequin or something, like maybe a kid was pulling a prank, student was pulling a prank or something like that. So he drove past, and then, moments later, he started to really think about it, having second thoughts. So he turned around and headed back. And once he got out of his car, he noticed that the figure was lying on the pavement next to a Chevy Citation. And so he approached it, and he realized that lying in a pool of blood was actually the dead body of a young woman. Two students on the way to their cars saw the scene as well, and so they actually recognized the young woman, and they were the ones that identified her as Robin Brantley. She was 23, a communications major. She had left a party in the Fine Arts building just minutes earlier. There was a music recital, which Brantley had volunteered as an usher. And so the party had, it was like right after the recital. She had been wearing a long print dress with flower designs, but it had been pulled up above her stomach, revealing bikini underwear and knee-high stockings. A purse, later determined to be Brandy's, was on the pavement nearby, and the ground around her was soaked with her blood. While the detective Michael Stephanie was one of the first law enforcement officials to arrive, and he saw immediately that she had been stabbed numerous times, mostly in her neck, chest, and back, and that she had also cuts to her hands, which
she was trying to defend herself.
Defensive wounds. But other than her body, her blood, there was little evidence, no other DNA, fingerprints, hair, clothing fibers, nothing. Later on, the autopsy would show that she had been stabbed 41 times.
That is awful.
41 times she was stabbed.
The amount of, I don't even know what that is. That's a whole nother level.
Like, overkill is not even a word that could describe that. 41
times.
41 times.
That's like rage, anger,
seeing
hatred.
red.
Yeah, that's a whole different level.
And what's crazy is that, despite this being like such a brutal murder, it would remain a mystery for the next 11 years. 11 years went on without any information as to what actually had happened to her. Okay, so fast forward 2 years. July 17th, 1988. Julie McGhee, she was 29 and a prostitute. She disappeared. She was picked up by an unknown male. And her remains was stripped of identification, and they were found in like this desert area. It was difficult to identify her because there was mutilation from like coyotes and possibly other animals. But there were cartridge cases for a .45 caliber handgun found nearby her body.
Okay.
And so initially they're like, oh, this is a single isolated homicide. 2 months later, September 25th, another prostitute, Mary Ann Wells, she was 31, also picked up by an unknown male. Her body was found later, shot in the head. And also, same thing, a cartridge case was left behind. But at this scene, there was a condom found at the scene.
Okay.
And it had Wells' DNA as well as DNA from another person. But the stranger's DNA did not immediately lead anywhere.
I just call bullshit.
Bullshit. So by the time of the next slaying, so this is like 7-8 months later, same county, Riverside County, they started to see links between the deaths.
Okay.
On April 16, 1989, another prostitute, Tammy Irwin, 20, was picked up and driven to an area near Palm Springs where she was shot 3 times and her body dumped. Again, cartridge cases found near the body.
Okay.
So he's a sloppy murderer.
It's like the method keeps changing because I just feel like it's not like it's not a planned thing. Like I feel like he just be like bored and out and find a chick and it's like, oh,
this is what I'm gonna do today.
This is what I'm gonna do today. You know, that's why the first one was stabbed 41 times, and then 2 prostitutes were shot once, but another prostitute was shot 3 times.
And maybe it could have been off taping, you were saying that the 41 time murder, maybe it was so hard because maybe she was still alive and he didn't really know how to kill her.
Yep.
But maybe on that one where he shot her 3 times, maybe the first shot didn't kill her, and then he had to shoot her more.
Yeah.
Clearly he's gone to guns. He's like, I'm done with this knife stuff.
Yeah, and so he's like, gun is my weapon of choice. But yeah, I think that with the stabbing, I don't know, maybe he just felt like she put up more of a fight than he was prepared for. So he's like, I'll just shoot him from now on.
Yeah, the feisty one.
Yeah. And then so at this point, they realized they had a serial killer on their hands. The ballistics test showed that the cartridge cases from all 3 murders matched and that they had all been killed with the same gun. But at this point, they didn't have a weapon or a suspect. There was no link for them to suggest that this had anything to do with the murder of Robin Brantley because the contrast was so great. You know, Brantley was his college student. She wasn't a prostitute. She hadn't been shot. She was stabbed over and over and over again. Whereas, here were 3 prostitutes who were last seen getting in the car with an unknown male, blah, 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 and then they were shot. So there was just too many differences for them to be like, oh, these are related. And so there actually was like a 3.5 years where there were no additional murders that they could be like, oh, this is the same guy.
So now going forward with your Dallas, in this time frame, he was in the military when all this was going on.
Yes.
And one to the nickname that they gave him that makes you wonder, like, why were they playing at that type of name with him?
Yeah.
Was there some form of action that was seen that made it like, is he some form of suspect? Is there something that he's doing that's inappropriate, right?
Right.
But to the part that is real, just should have sent off a red flag for anybody, somebody who was listening. During this time, he did have a high school reunion that he attended.
That was Thornridge, right?
Yeah. So he went back to
all
the
of y'all
area.
All of y'all that was there.
At least the people who was listening to this story that he was telling. He did say while he was at this reunion that he had killed 2 prostitutes. Didn't set off no red flag.
So, what have you been doing lately? Oh, well, I graduated college. I'm a doctor now. Oh, yeah. I actually, I'm teaching at the high school now. So I've been doing great things. Well, I killed 2 prostitutes.
That's something to write home about.
So did you do that in your spare time as being a Marine? Or,
I mean. Oh, and then he just walks away.
Walk away. Okay. So is that setting off any red flags?
Like, could you imagine him picking up the name tag and writing on the name tag his name? He's like Andrew Urdiales, and then
murder
prostitutes.
That's what I do in my spare time.
That's what I do. Oh, and also I'm a Marine.
Like nobody even thought at that time to like even go to the police. Like,
especially because y'all knew him in high school.
This motherfucker tripping.
Now it's not like you're a teenager. You know what's going on. You're an adult.
And you knew he was a little awkward in high school.
Y'all knew he was
But you know
crazy.
what? People paint that is like, oh, you're the awkward teen.
But
them be the ones.
That's my thing, is that if he would have just showed up and was still awkward, I wouldn't think too much about it. But if he was awkward then and he shows up and announces that he killed 2 prostitutes.
He had little to no follow through.
I'm just thinking about kids and about how high school goes. We all know them weird kids that went to high school with us. I know one. I'm not going to tell that story right here because I want her to come get me. But I'm just saying, we all know some stories and we know them. And you know that those people that went to high school with him They knew he killed that dang old dog.
Yeah, when
if he convinced his
when he was convicted, nobody was shocked.
They wasn't shocked. They was like, oh yeah, the weird one who couldn't talk to nobody. He couldn't even freaking go order a sandwich without people being like alarmed.
The one who beat the dog with the bat.
Beat the dog with a bat. And killed 2 prostitutes in Holiday. Okay. In 1991, Corporal Urdiales was honorably discharged from the Marines.
I wonder why.
Yeah, I wonder
Gee
why.
Whiz.
I'm just saying, like, at some point they had to be like, the jig is up, y'all. Like, anyway. So he was honorably discharged from the Marines, and he moved back to Chicago with his family, with his parents. And so he was there for less than a year, and in September he came back for a little holiday. Now, what do you guys do on your holiday? I know what I did on my last holiday. I whooped it up in New Orleans. What'd y'all do?
I was in Jamaica chilling.
I was just in Mexico. We had a good time. We was chilling.
Not killing people though.
No,
that wasn't on my bingo card.
Murder was not my form of relaxation.
Was not on my 2023.
There was some people that upset me a little bit that I thought about. Could I get away with this? But I didn't actually do it.
Right.
Not on foreign territory.
No, because you're gonna be there forever. In Mexican jail? No,
thank you. I can't.
So anyway, what he did on his holiday was he decided that it would be a nice idea to kidnap a 19-year-old nurse. Her name was Jennifer Asbenson. And basically what he did was he got her under the guise of she needed a ride. So once he got her into his vehicle, he asked for a number. She gave him a fake number.
My girl.
Because she probably, what
I will say is if you felt uncomfortable enough to not give him your real number,
you shouldn't have gotten the car.
Why did you feel comfortable?
Probably shouldn't have did that.
I would have said at that bus stop.
It was a different time too. The early 90s. I don't know.
They were still giving out fake numbers in the 90s.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as rides, I remember, so in the early 90s, so I would have been like, grade school? I remember my parents used to let me catch the bus. So I would ride on Gary Transportation to go, and I mean, it was a different time.
Yeah, but she did say that, she said he didn't seem threatening when he offered the ride, that he just seemed like a good Samaritan. So she accepted the ride. She didn't feel any sense of fear and thought that he was so nice and charming.
It's giving Ted Bundy.
A little bit. It's a little bit. But what he decided to do thereafter is what got to be the sketch.
But look, so he did drop her off at work in time for her shift. So she worked from 10 p.m. till 6 a.m.
But then he came back and got her.
Because he sat and he stewed. He said that he sat and he thought about the fact that she gave him the wrong number, and it made him so mad.
That quick if she
because he said he tried to call her.
She is at work.
No, he said he tried to call her and realized that it was a bum number, and so he went and waited for her to get off work.
Evil ass.
So basically, he hates rejection. He fears it.
He sat and stewed from 10 p.m. till 6 a.m. That man was
lost sleep
all night thinking about how
she gave
him the fake number.
The audacity of her.
You know what would be even more messed up is that if she didn't give him a fake number, but he just misheard her wrong and took that maybe one number was off.
You said 9 and I got 5,
and now I gotta die. But this goes into even nowadays where we were hearing all the stories of guy trying to talk to a girl and she no thank you, and she getting shot.
Yes,
it happens to this very day.
Yes, it's damn,
I can't want to talk to you. It's okay.
I can't say no.
Yes, you can.
Just so you all know, just because you're interested in somebody, that does not necessarily mean they have to be interested in you. Just let it go. Not just men, women too. Just let it go.
It can hurt your feelings.
It can hurt your feelings a little bit.
And you just have to.
You gotta deal with it. You have to deal with it.
Maybe you dodged the bullet.
Why I gotta lose my life?
Maybe you dodged it.
I told, I was talking to my boyfriend and I was like, because I asked him, I said, if a girl asks you for your number, what you gonna do? He'd be like, no, I got a girlfriend. He's like, if a guy asks you for your number, what you gonna do? I said, I'm gonna give him my number and I'm gonna walk away alive, because I don't have the choice
You don't
to
have,
be like,
yeah.
no, because like I said, we've heard so many stories of real things where a woman said no, wasn't even rude, was just kind of like, no, thank you. And it's like, you've had the nerve to say no to me.
And that just happened recently where a woman was like walking down the street and like she told the guy, like she wasn't rude or nothing. She was just saying like, no, I'm not interested. And he was very upset with her. He followed her after she like kept walking. He followed her and went and he shot her in the head.
Yep. And then here's the thing. Even if she was rude, she has that right.
Yeah, she has that right to be.
Yeah, because the last time I checked, we don't live
but
in the
at
Middle
no
East.
point do you have the right to take somebody's life. Because it's
that fear of rejection shit.
Mm-hmm. It's okay. There's other people. You can talk to them too.
Yes. So he came back and waited for her to get off work. Mm-hmm. So he was like, "Let me give you a ride home." Mm-hmm. She's still thinking like he's not dangerous. And if he wanted to do something, he could have done it the night before. Mm-hmm. So she accepted the ride again.
Because he had already disarmed her.
Yep, exactly. He had already broke down all her walls of trust. Like, she like, oh, I got in the car with him once before and everything turned out fine. Mm-hmm. I can get in the car with him again. However,
at this point, it turns.
Yes, because once inside the car, things were very different this time.
So he tied her up and he began to cut off her clothes. At this point, he attempted to rape her. But he was unable to perform. So I'm assuming that maybe this might be where PP and Urdiales is come from. Corporal PP. I don't know. Anywho, so it didn't work. And because it didn't work and she called him a coward, he just became upset and decided he was just going to kill her. So he started beating her. He bit her neck. She started bleeding. And at that point, he put her in the trunk of his car. When he did this, she kind of got her hands free and untied of the bounds that he had on her. And she was able to get out of that trunk and she escaped. She began running down the highway. She was naked, like call it naked and afraid, and bit and bleeding. Mm-hmm. And she actually flags down a truck.
Yes.
In this truck, there are two Marines. And Urdiales actually gets back in his vehicle and he's escaping because what I forgot to add is this psycho was chasing her down the road with a freaking machete.
Yes.
Okay, just chasing her down the road with a machete. So anyways, he gets back in the car and he actually escapes.
No, wait. Because you got to hear his version of how things happen.
Okay, go.
He says, at one point, so basically he said that he realized the number she gave him had been a bum number. It wasn't hers. He had tried calling her after dropping her off at work. And so he did stew about it during the night. And while waiting for her to get off work, so he could offer to take her to breakfast and give her a ride home, he said he began to feel upset about the number or something. Something was just kind of building up, tension.
Oh, okay.
He had remained nonetheless and made his offer, which she accepted. At one point while they were driving, he says that he reached over and grabbed her by her hair and showed her a gun. After which she had became pretty much submissive from that part forward.
This is what
he said.
Fearing for her fucking life.
That's when he forced her to turn around, tied her hands, all that stuff. He says, I think before we started moving, after I tied her hands up, I reached over and I kissed her. I just put my lips on her mouth and then I just started, I was trying to make out with her.
Oh, yeah, because definitely gunpoint
and
tying me
I'm
up.
Turned on.
Gets it
turned
every
on.
time.
And so he says at another point he forces her to perform oral sex on him. And that's when he fails to get an erection.
Because you're a fucking creep.
Yeah, so after that, he attempted to rape her after cutting off her clothes and stuff. and he began to choke her. And this is what he says. She kept kicking, and her saliva was coming out of her mouth. Her face was turning blue and then red. It was just a battle for a while.
No shit.
And so after this, he said his hand became tired from choking her.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You need an ice pack?
And so after he got tired from choking her, he forced her out of the car and threatened her so that she would try to perform oral sex again, which still did not work.
Wait a minute, the gunpoint and tying the hands didn't work, so now we're going to threaten and that's going to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Because we're learning. We're learning. And after this point, he puts her in the trunk of his car, drives off. When she escaped, he said his first thought was to shoot her.
Oh my God. Just sick.
But as we know, instead, he chased her down with a machete. That's what she says. He says his first thought was to shoot her, but then he just drove away instead because of the presence of too many other vehicles on the road. And he says, so that was the last time I saw her. I don't know if somebody else picked her up and finished what I started.
Who else is gonna do what in the what? Who else is doing that? Who else is gonna finish what you started, sir? This is not the way that normal people operate in the world. But this is you, crazy.
So that's what he said. But she says, when she testified in court, she said that he was actually successful in his attempt to rape her after cutting off her clothes.
It is sick. Rape.
Yeah.
You put your penis in my mouth, that's rape. Rape.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Just because you don't see it as rape, sir, because you didn't get to finish, you're a creep.
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
So, 2.5 years later, after, Asbenson has escaped, she gave a description. Mm-hmm. They got the DNA from this bite, but they still was not able to.
The imprints of the imprints,
everything.
Come on, I mean,
they were not.
Marines, come on now, y'all.
Yep. Everybody is in a dental record database.
Hello, they check everything to be in the Marines. Everything.
So, whatever, they still weren't able to find who her murderer was or who the guy was that tried to murder her, but rape her and everything like that. And so 2.5 years later, on March 11th, 1995, again in the Palm Springs area, Denise Maney, a 32-year-old prostitute, was picked up, driven to a remote area, and so she was disrobed, after which he tied her hands behind her back, sexually assaulted her, placed a .45 caliber gun in her mouth, and blew the back of her head off.
Oh my God.
He on some Jack the Ripper shit.
This time, he took her clothes with him and left her body in the desert.
And they said what scavengers got to her.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. After this is when he decides, what, California is
it's a little too much.
I'm not living the California life. California.
Well, I mean, it's because where you're starting at, sir. California is supposed to be easy. You're supposed to be surfing. You're supposed to be looking at chicks at the beach, but not killing them.
And your avocado salad and shit.
Yes.
But he said he wasn't feeling the California breeze no more, and he wanted
to
come
a surfer. He could have been an actor. He could have went to Disney World.
He wanted to come back home.
Okay.
So he made his way on back to the Midwest. Mm-hmm. Back to the Midwest.
Terrorize us. All right.
Okay, to give you all a little bit of a background on that area. So a lot of people think when they say Chicago, they think that Chicago is this big, massive area. It is to an extent. So we have south suburbs of Chicago, and a lot of people like to confuse those as being a part of Chicago, and it's not. So in that area, you have Dalton, Riverdale, South Holland, you got Cal City, you got Burnham, it's Lansing, Harvey, Hedgewood, you got Hammond. It's all mixed in, but those parts are going into Indiana. Mm-hmm. So it kind of, Wolf Lake, where he was dumping the bodies, is pretty much, it sits on the Indiana-Illinois border. So it's kind of like it blends really well. In those areas, especially frequent in those areas are heavily wooded. It's a lot of little lakes. Then you got Wolf Lake, and you also have the Little Calumet River. Wolf Lake is like really like a nice little calm lake. A lot of people like to go fishing and everything, and occasionally you might find a dead body or two, but you might catch a fish, you might catch a body. It depends on the day. But also they're known to have like festivals every year called Festival of Lakes. Yeah. So they have different events and everything, but it's also so easy to get away with murders in that particular area and up and down the shoreline between Indiana and Illinois, because it's nothing but forest preserves as well as little tiny marshes and lakes.
Also, when you're going down through that area, because you have marshes that kind of wrap around it, but through the lake, you actually have a highway. It's called the Skyway that will take you, and you drive kind of through it. So in thinking of, if you quickly wanted to dump a body, that could be another way to do it.
Tips on how to dump a body.
Literally drive
into the Little Calumet River
and keep on going, and no one really think a thing. If you're over pulled to the side of the road like you're fixing a tire, you could dump a body.
Y'all, she did air
keep
quotes.
Driving. Yeah, I did.
She said quotes. Fixing a tire.
And then just keep on driving.
And we're telling you all this is because it's really common. Like, this is a thing, a habit. Like, mostly anytime somebody tries to get away with a body in this vicinity, it's that area.
Do you think that they do something like, I don't know, install traffic cams over
there? Well,
they
do. The thing is that
it's pointing to the street.
You have
no, I'm saying, but like if you have something where this is a thing, people dump stuff in this body, you think they come up with some type of measure?
But if you think about it, it's a heavily guarded area too,
because it's a forest preserve.
Well, not just that it's a forest preserve. On one side, you have BP. You have the steel mills that are over there. All of that.
Has guards and cameras.
Guarding cameras. After 9/11, that area went from being where, any time Dick and Harry can come through. You literally have to badge in, badge out. They don't let you take your cars in. You got to bus in and stuff to go into certain areas. Now, going into like Cleveland Cliffs, that area, you badge in. But I went to go work one day, right? Because what I do, going into Cleveland Cliffs, the guy is like, I need to search your car. I'm like, search my car? I got a freaking dog.
I got a body back here.
Right? I'm like, sir, all you're going to find is tools, some snacks, some clothes. That's it.
Don't look too deep. Don't look too hard.
Nothing to see here. But yeah, so they guard that. And then also on that area, that's the Skyway, that is a toll road. So they have cameras wazoo up there, but people still find a way to be some
where
criminals.
There's a will, there's a way.
There is. And I mean, there are a lot of remote areas. If you go on the other side, like where the lake is bordered by the preserves, then, if you're familiar with it, you can easily dispose of a body.
Okay. So that's where our man is. That's where our
and it's
man of the hour is.
It's like basically his backyard.
It is his backyard. That's where he goes. And on April 14th, 1996,
here he comes.
Halfway across the nation from California, in Cook County, Illinois, a prostitute was picked up off a street, driven to Wolf Lake area, and Uylaki was shot twice in the head with a .38 caliber revolver, and afterward, her nude body was thrown into Wolf Lake, where it was later found on the Chicago side of the lake, because as they mentioned, it's kind of like that border. And so police, their theory was that the killer had taken the victim's clothes off. Oh, really? And other items to happen, to try and stop them from identifying her.
Okay.
And of course, they didn't see any connection with the prostitutes that were being killed in California.
Because who would connect that? That's halfway across.
And when people murder people, nobody is really thinking about, this guy murdered this person all the way in California. Yep. Let me just think of a small section between Indiana and Illinois. Like, nobody is really going to zero in on that particular area.
My question is, this is 1996, but my question is that and something that we've seen time and time again of people trying to evade the law by going somewhere else and picking up their killing spree. Mm-hmm. Why is this not a thing that was implemented?
You literally can get extradited back
as we have something where randomly a prostitute was killed and dropped in the lake. Okay, we're going to investigate this murder. No, we're not going to initially say it's a serial killer. But let me just see if there's any other news of a prostitute being murdered with a gun and dropped naked. Yeah, let me just see.
But then at those times, you got to think about it, like, especially when it comes to prostitutes, a lot of like police departments, a lot of like investigators, they kind of just, just say that that's an L because you're a prostitute anyway. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And unfortunately, it seemed like they had little to no regard for them. Mm-hmm. And like this shit was just happening to them, and they still deserved a life to live.
The fact that there was no further news on the first college student that was stabbed 41 times.
But she's so far removed.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, it's pretty much like they were like, oh, well, this is an unsolved murder. Like, you didn't see any more news of them trying to see what could have possibly happened. Mm-hmm. So anyways, 3 months later, also in Illinois, on July 14th, 1996, the body of Cassandra Corum, she was 21, she was another prostitute, was found in the Vermilion River, and that's in Livingston County. And so this was near Pontiac. Mm-hmm. Duct tape had been placed over her mouth, and she had been shot in the head. Later it showed that she had also been stabbed 7 times in the chest and head.
Oh my God, dude.
Her wrist had been handcuffed, and duct tape had also been used to bind her ankles. She had disappeared from a bar in Hammond, Indiana, and left with a man getting into his pickup truck.
And for you guys who, again, are not from here, Hammond, from where he was, that's like a 10-minute ride from Dalton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can go right down Sibley Avenue and you will literally be in Hammond.
Yep.
So that is not far.
All of these places just run together. Like, it's to not to be confused with the other suburbs we was talking about, because Chicago
is massive.
It's massive, and it has over 100 suburbs. So it's easy to get that confused. But that little section runs right together.
Mm-hmm. So then the next month, on August 2nd, 1996, they found a body of Lynn Huber. She was 22. And she was also found in Wolf Lake, literally a few yards from where Laura's body was found in the spring. And like most of the other victims, she was a prostitute and she had no clothes or identification.
And the thing is that he's just ruining everybody's summer, their lives. He's murdering these women, but I mean, he's taking an area that is a family area, because if you are from the Midwest and you are from Chicago, you know these communities. They are tight-knit communities. Everybody know everybody. Even though it's vast, it's still small. Mm-hmm. And you're putting this fear in the communities of probably everyone telling their young daughters, and you need to watch it because there is literally somebody out here hunting and killing you guys. And just the fear that goes along with it. And actually, also, for me personally, when we found this story, it was just very disturbing because of all the positive memories that I have of Wolf Lake and going to the festivals. I mean, we've had performers from Nas to Twister to, I mean, it's just a fun thing to do with your family. And they have all different types of activities. And this dude is just over here
slicing and dicing.
Slicing, dicing, and dumping.
Yeah. And then this is where we get into kind of like how we get to the arrest, which was still a long process.
It sure was.
So on November 14th, 1996, Hammond police officer Warren Fryer, he stopped a man that was driving a pickup truck after he observed the man parked outside what they suspected to be a crack house with a prostitute that was known to the police. Mm-hmm. So Fryer called for backup and waited for additional police to arrive. When he approached the vehicle, they say that Andrew Urdiales, he was the driver, he's 31 years old, was very cooperative, and he explained that he had served in the Marines.
Of course.
And while he was explaining this, Fryer noticed a revolver inside the pickup and loudly yelled, "Gun!" to his fellow officers. The revolver was a snub-nosed, chrome-plated .38 Special, and the officer noted that it was fully loaded with 6 bullets. And since Urdiales didn't have a permit for the gun, he was arrested for carrying a concealed weapon, and the revolver was confiscated.
But also, this is Illinois, so we don't know what your gun laws are, but I can tell you what Illinois are. Even if he had a permit, he still wouldn't have had the business of carrying that weapon.
Yes.
You cannot do that.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so, as like the pickup's getting ready to be towed, the officers are noticing, like, you know what? For this to be a pickup, like, it is super clean. Like, it's spotlessly clean. Mm-hmm. Inside and out, even like the cab of the truck was as clean as the out, like if he washed the outside of the car or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like it had came out of a showroom. That's what they described it as. And I also found rolls of duct tape inside the vehicle. Now, even with them having this gun and all that stuff, Urdiales was released on the concealed weapon charge.
Of course he was.
But later was convicted of a misdemeanor for unauthorized possession of a handgun. Mm-hmm. So, this, like I said, this was on November 14th, 1996.
Okay.
All right. So, next we're going to go to the next event, right? So, April 1st, 1997, Officer Fryer received a call about a man and a woman fighting. This was at the time it was known as the American Inn, and this was on Calumet Avenue in Hammond. Mm-hmm. So, according to police, Urdiales told the officer that a woman, a prostitute, had stolen something from him. The prostitute, however, also known to the police, like they knew she was a prostitute, told them that Urdiales was kind of kinky, and that the altercation arose because Urdiales wanted to take the woman to Wolf Lake, handcuff her in the back of his pickup, and have sex with her. Fryer told the prostitute, "Geez, don't do that. We're finding girls up there dead."
Oh. It wasn't alarming at all. And he told her he wanted to do the exact thing that you guys have been finding.
Yes. So here's the thing. Officer Fryer writes up a police report, right, about the incident and files it, but does not arrest Urdiales or the woman. Instead, he later ran like a computer check on Urdiales that, encompassed known infractions involving him in Hammond, which was including the November 1996 incident. And so he forwarded all that information to the detective division because Fryer had made Wolf Lake connection to the murdered prostitutes. Copies of the reports were turned in. They were all sent to the homicide detectives with the Chicago police. And then after they reviewed it, the Chicago police detective asked Hammond police for the confiscated revolver.
Okay.
That's when they asked for the revolver. Once they got the weapon, Detective McGrath, he was the one with Chicago PD. He took it to a gun expert. Through examination, the test showed that it was the same gun that had been used to kill Laura, Cassandra, and Lynn.
Well, at least somebody connected it. Jesus.
And at this point, they're like, "Oh yeah, we got a serial killer."
Oh, we got him, guys. We definitely got him.
Blue's Clues.
Okay, now here we go to Urdiales'
Captain
PP's arrest. Here we go, stakeout and arrest again. So on April 22nd, which was a Tuesday, Detective McGrath and Detective Raymond, whose last name I cannot say, but you can look at it and read it,
In the notes.
Right, in the notes. They did a stakeout of Urdiales' parents' home. And they were able to discern from the information that they had already researched on him that he had been discharged from the military years before. And also they were, just waiting kind of in the neighborhood, which was like a family neighborhood, and kind of waiting to see what would happen or what they could find and see. His parents had lived in this neighborhood now for about 10 years. So they were starting to kind of put things together of how he was getting around and interacting in the neighborhood and finding his victims. But they didn't have to wait long because he was, of course, in the midst of his murder. He still managed to do his mall cop job. And he was headed to go to work at 9 a.m. when they saw him leaving in his security uniform. And the two detectives walked up to him and told him that they needed to speak with him. And what do you think you would do if the cops told you they need to talk to you? What would your actions be? Would you be like, oh, okay, I'm going to talk to you?
No. After knowing what I did, I'm about to take off.
I'll be like, yes, officer, how can I help?
No, I'm running. I'm sorry.
Well, let me tell you what he did. When they said they needed to speak to him, and it was about the gun that they had confiscated in November, this dude, he was hesitant at first, but then he'd agreed to go with them and talk with them. But in the incident, they're talking about his actual activities. He began to untie his shoelaces. Yeah. He loosened his tie.
All that shit you doing, you could have took off and ran.
He was getting undressed for his goddamn police jail uniform.
I would have made a beeline just in case they start shooting. Just
stop. I'm just like, why are we unloosening the shoelace? Like, it just goes to show how freaking weird he was.
He got to do like Dave Chappelle and flick the pitcher of water when he get there and just take off.
So at this point, they're talking to him about the gun. He let him know that he bought it in Calumet City, which is also a suburb of South Chicago or South Side of Chicago. He got it for $300.
That's cheap.
Give me a gun.
Listen,
that gun probably had hella bodies on it before him for $300.
Well, I wonder, like, did he actually obtain it in any form of legal way?
My thing is that he could be lying.
He could have been told. Yeah, he could have been told them everything that they wanted to hear.
Niggas lie every day, B.
So anyways, they're getting this information for him, and then he decides that, you know what, now it's time to pony up the truth, y'all. I'm gonna just start telling. I'm gonna start singing like a canary because I ain't got shit else to do. They already got me to know the gun. And so McGrath indicated that he and his partner were investigating the unsolved crimes and shooting deaths precisely that were involved with this gun.
He's like, yeah, that was me.
And
it's me, Mario.
He started off like, no, I don't recognize him. But you know what?
Second thought.
You know, that Laura girl and Huber and all of them. Yeah, that might have been me.
That might have been me.
And I might have done that. And in that matter, you know, I might be the person that you're interested in. So, you know, he gives up the goat. He tells them, you know, that he tied him up, that he, it never does say that if he told them that he dumped the bodies, but he did admit to being their guy, being their person that had done these things.
It's me.
Also,
I'm the problem. It's me.
At this point, it wasn't until this point that they started to connect his earlier murders either. So they still, even with the gun and connecting,
well, you know, he was using a different gun. He was using a 45,
but still,
in California.
But still, even with it being
like such a similar
thing, you're tying up prostitutes, you're murdering them, and then you're dumping them naked. They still never even got a connection until he started singing like
until he started confessing.
Yes.
He definitely could have been like, oh yeah, I just killed these people, and that would have been the end of it.
I think he actually, because didn't you say that he had told the detective?
Oh yeah, he was like, I'm actually glad you guys caught me, because you know I was starting to get that urge again.
He probably was getting tired of running at the same time. Like how much?
I mean,
well,
imagine the fear he must have though, because here in less than a year he's had 3 different run-ins with the cops.
Whereas before he didn't really. Have
exactly.
Run-ins. He had one run-in that scared him, and then he left.
Yeah. And so I think that this time it was like, I think he realized that he was getting caught anyway. So he's like, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and tell. Like my thing is, why did they have to do a stakeout anyway? Y'all confiscated the gun from him. Mm-hmm. You've confirmed that this gun killed 3 people.
I think because, the way they describe the neighborhood with it being a family neighborhood and his parents own the home, he didn't necessarily own the home, and they were under the suspicion that he stayed there, but probably weren't sure that he was there at the time. Okay. That's why they were staking it out to kind of find him. Mm-hmm. I think it would have been different if he had owned the home, and he was there.
Yeah, I understand that. And so once he was arrested, like you said, he started telling everything. He started talking about how him and Laura met. And he explained that they had met during the winter of 1996. Gotta make it sound romantic.
I really am disgusted about how he tries to make all of his encounters sound romantic, and the only person who's romantic to is him.
Yeah, he makes them sound like, it was just a normal encounter that just had, we just had a bad day.
He was a little delulu.
Yeah, and
but so it might come back from maybe he's never had any form of appropriate connections to possibly really see. It did say when it came down to his investigation that he had said he had been abused by his sister, right?
Yeah, it said that he was molested by his sister.
So maybe he doesn't know what appropriate.
I don't know.
Relationship.
But he does say that him and Laura went out on dates a few times.
Oh, really?
He said they had sex on 2 occasions at Wolf Lake using a sleeping bag that he kept in the back of his truck.
Sexy.
He said that it began in April of 1996. He picked up... So this was when the incident of when Laura was killed. Mm-hmm. That he picked her up. They again went to Wolf Lake. Along the way, an argument broke out. When they got there, he took out his .38 caliber revolver and was showing it to Laura. When it went off and shot a hole in the roof of his pickup. Laura got mad. All hell broke loose. This is what he says. And he says that she attempted to grab his gun and broke his left index finger during the struggle. And so, unable to gain control of the situation, she jumped out of the truck and tried to run away. He followed her. He fired a couple of rounds in her direction as he chased her. And then when she fell to the ground, he went over to her and determined that she was dead. So, it's not that I shot her and she fell. It's I was shooting the gun at her. And then after she fell, I realized she was dead. It was then that he made the decision to toss her body into the lake. Before throwing her into the lake,
Laura was the one who decided to take her clothes.
Yeah, he undressed her and took her clothes with him. Mm-hmm. And then on the way back to Chicago, he threw the clothes out of his truck.
Now, how did he fix the bullet hole because the police said that car was immaculate.
Yeah.
So how he fixed the bullet hole?
I have no idea. He goes on to tell them about Lynn, his 7th victim, who he met during the summer of 1996. He says that Huber was working as a prostitute in Chicago and that they had sex on 2 occasions. Same thing as with Laura. And that in late July or early August, he had seen Huber carrying a large garbage bag. And so he stopped and offered her a ride. She accepted. They recalled that Huber's body was found August 2nd. So as Urdiales is continuing to tell his side of the story, he says that they drove into an alley where they had sex. He claims she began arguing with him and started acting kind of ditzy before trying to get out the truck. He says he grabbed her, shot her in the head with the gun he kept under the driver's seat. After he killed her, He placed her body in the bed of the truck, drove to Wolf Lake, removed her clothes. And as he removed her clothes, he pricked his finger with a needle. And he said that pricking his finger made him angry, and that's why he took a knife and stabbed her.
Wow.
He said that he stabbed her a lot of times in the back. And then afterwards, he shot her again. And then threw her body in the lake. And he left with the garbage bag that she had been carrying. After he looked through everything and discovered that it had like clothes. He took the clothes that he had took off of her, put them in the bag, and gave them to the Salvation Army because she won't need them anymore.
That is fucking weird.
You're right. She won't need them anymore.
She won't need them anymore. This man, the way he talks about these murders as if it's just a normal conversation. For somebody who sucks at small talk, he is just talking about these murders as if...
Because there's something that is definitely full-blown psychotic.
Yeah.
Full-blown.
He's like, murder.
Okay, so Detective McGrath and Raymond concluded of the serial killer that the eighth and final victim, Urdiales said, was Cassandra Corum. And that was about 2 years before killing. He said that he knew her for about 2 years before killing her on July 13th. And after meeting her in Hammond, they had, this is like the same repeat story that he just keeps.
They had an argument. Oh no, they had sex 2 times.
Right, they had like Hammond. That's where he found his girls at. But anyways, they had sex. They met at a bar first, and they drove up to Wolf Lake and they had sex. And her body was found floating in the lake. But at one point in the evening, he became angry because he's always angry.
Them anger issues.
And he hit her several times in the face.
Ouch.
And it was just with his hands and his fists, but
that's it. I only use my hands and my fists.
Well, of course, Mary. That's not bad.
No.
It's just hands and fists. What is wrong here?
So, okay. Cool.
And it frightened her because of his violence, and she panicked and, of course, began fighting back.
How unreasonable of her. She panicked from him beating her in the face. Who would have thought it?
No,
who would have thought?
One time.
Now, wait a minute. Now, what do you think he did next? Because they had sex already.
Oh.
At Wolf Lake. What do you think he did next?
He shot her.
No, he handcuffed her.
Oh,
yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So he handcuffed her. Okay. After handcuffing her and putting her hands behind her back.
Did she calm down?
No, she didn't calm down. She did not calm down, but he did his next part of the MO, which is removing her clothes. And of course, because she was afraid and anxious and numb from all of his craziness, that just pissed him off. These were his words. This is not me being sarcastic.
This man confession was crazy.
He said he was pissed off, and he duct taped her mouth and bound her with duct tape as well. And because he was so angry with her, as he was driving down 55, and she was, of course, gagged, scared, terrified, and she was in the front seat, and knew she was about to die, Urdiales recalled that he just got tired, and he exited the highway, and eventually went over a bridge by a park, shut off the engine, and he got her out of the car, or out of the truck, and he grabbed the gun from underneath the seat, his trusty dusty gun that he keeps under the seat. And he took her to the back of the truck while she was naked. And when he turned to face her and, knowing what he was planning, he shot her. And according to the documents, and this is according to him, she fell to the ground. And he was still so angry because how dare she fight back and be afraid for dying and afraid for dealing with a psycho. He stabbed her a few times. And then he dropped her body into the river.
That's his favorite MO.
It is his MO. It is his ridiculous MO of how dare women fight back.
And there's somewhere where they said that's what he said. He said it just really made him upset. Like it really pissed him off when they would beg for their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was just so disgusting to him. Like, why are you begging for your life?
Mm-hmm. And so he tried to use the excuse of, well, I was in the Marine Corps and they trained me to kill people.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Not like that stupid.
Oh. So, he felt like it was unfair to have sympathy for her. He had no sympathy. And he just said, she was just a whore.
Mm.
That was his.
So, as we're going into it, it explains the different modes of killing. Why first it was just the stabbings, then he escalated to the guns, why some people were shot more times or stabbed more times. Here we are, we were thinking that if they were stabbed and things like that, it was because they put up a fight.
Mm-hmm.
But not necessarily, because the girl before Huber, he shot her, she was dead.
Mm-hmm.
And he started to think about something she did when she was alive, about the argument. And so he stabbed her in the back 4 times and then shot her again.
Or the
after
one
she's
that
already
pricked
dead.
His finger because she had a needle
in her clothes. And so you
stab her because you're mad. He's like a person who has not... He has... Like, those things like when you're little and you're upset and your parents just let you cry to kind of figure out how to deal with your emotions.
Self-soothe.
He never learned self-soothing.
No.
Everything is
an escalation.
Yeah.
Every time something happens, it's like, how dare you inconvenience me?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what they were. They were inconveniences to him because he wanted to be able to do what he wanted to be able to have his way. And how dare they fight? How dare they beg for their life? How dare they
not like it?
How dare they not like it?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, this guy was just a hot mess. Okay. All right. So when he made his confession to the detectives, he came out and started talking about Robin Brantley. That was his first victim. And so he basically said, so he was stationed at Camp Pendleton in San Diego. And he said basically he was upset about some relationships with some of the people on the base and decided he wanted to rob somebody. So
cowardice.
He armed himself with a big old hunting knife. That's what he says. It was about 11 inches long, and he drove to Saddleback College, and he just kind of waited for a victim. He says it could have been anybody, and he just was going to pick a random female, and it turned out to be Robin Brantley. He says when he saw her, he crept up behind her, placed his hand over her mouth, demanding her purse. She gave it to him, and then he began stabbing her in the back. He said when she fell to the pavement, he started stabbing her in the chest. He says at one point the knife became stuck in her ribs, and so in order to remove it, he had to place his foot on her body to brace it while he struggled to extract the knife. When he finished, he said he left her there to die. Then, with blood on his hands, jacket, and jeans, he knew he had to get back on the base undetected, so he took some grease from his car engine and rubbed it on his hands and on his clothes and stuff. And he told the guard that his car had broken down and he had to make some repairs. He later tells him that he picked up a prostitute in Hollywood with whom he did have sex, and that he was carrying the same knife that he used to kill Brantley, but says that prostitute was lucky. So then
she really was.
She really was, though. So then we go into McGhee, Wells, and Irwin. He says that with McGhee, he picked her up. They had sex. A little time later, he told her to get out of his car. And when she got out the car, he shot her in the head. He claimed that he did not feel anything after committing the murder and just commented on how quiet and peaceful it was in the desert.
That is the creepiest. You blew someone's brains out and you call that peaceful and quiet.
Yeah. Then he says afterwards, this is what really wrapped up his night. He went to a bar, got drunk, he had some beers, and watched the girls dance. 2 months later, with Marianne Wells, he said he drove her to an industrial area. They had sex.
I love how he keeps calling rape sex.
Yeah. They had sex.
Women don't want you.
Afterward, he said he shot her in the head and took back the $40 he paid her.
$40?
And dumped her body in an alley along with the condom. Like, so he purposely left the condom there with her.
It was like he wanting to get caught because your DNA. Like,
I don't think that he had any concern about being caught. He was just going to do what he was going to do.
But he had some concern because he took the car grease from the engine and rubbed it to cover up the blood and stuff. So he had some concern. I don't know. But he then says
sounds like he was more scared of the military than he was scared of anything else. Yeah.
Then he said I wonder, like, because he says that, he was having he was upset about some relationships there. I wonder if there was like some bullying, there was some stuff where it says that like the people under him wasn't listening to him. They weren't following his orders.
They were making fun of him, making names of him. They weren't listening. That's why he got demoted. Mm-hmm. He was pissed, but clearly he was a coward because he didn't take it up with the big men that he was pissed off with. He took it out on poor little innocent women. Yeah,
and so then with Tammy, he says they went to a lot near Palm Springs where she performed oral sex on him. He said he doesn't actually recall arguing with her like he did with his other victims. He says, but he does remember shooting her as she stood outside his vehicle, outside his truck. He was getting ready to leave. He shot her, and she stood there holding her head. He shot her a second time, which brought her to the ground. And before he drove off, he shot her a third time. Damn. And then with Denise Maney, this was 3 years after kidnapping, raping, and trying to kill Jennifer Asbenson. Mm-hmm. He returned to Palm Springs for vacation in March 1995 and picked up Denise Maney in the same area where he picked up McGhee and Irwin. Drove her to the desert, stopped, had her take her clothes off and perform oral sex. After getting tired of the oral sex, he said he grabbed Maney by her hair and forced her to go to the front of his car and lie face down on the ground. He then tied her hands behind her back and forced her to perform fellatio again. Says because he wasn't really feeling satisfied, that's what he says, he forced her onto her knees and abused her anally with his fingers, causing her to scream from the pain. He then goes on to say, and that went on for a while. I just kept doing that to her. Tired of abusing Maney, Urdiales said he had forced her to walk toward the desert. And at one point they stopped. She turned around. He forced the gun into her mouth. He says it then went off.
Nigga, you pulled the trigger.
He said it blew off the back of Maney's head. Then she fell and she was still gurgling, making a lot of noises. He said he got in his car, started to drive away, but stopped and returned to where Maney was dying. He said, I didn't really think. I just kind of like wiped clean my hand and I stopped, turned around, and I went back to her. He said he then became angry and very upset, took out his knife, and then he started talking, like he changed his pronouns. He went from talking about I to talking about we. He says, we took the knife out and we went back to where she was lying. We just started stabbing for some reason, he told the cops. And so he says, just on the body several times, in the chest maybe, stomach. I remember I made a slashing motion by the throat. Then we went back to the car and we picked up her clothes. Then we were driving. We just started driving.
Is he talking about him and the knife?
I don't know. I really
it's given
have no clue whatsoever.
Or multiple personalities.
Yeah.
Something. It's
definitely multiple personalities.
There was nothing that ever really showed that he had an accomplice of any sort.
No, there was no evidence of an accomplice. He never said there was any accomplice. And a guy like that who remembers all the details, like the police say that his confession was very chilling because he remembered
everything.
Play by play.
Everything. And so I don't think he had an accomplice. I think it goes to like what you were saying is like, trying to like dissociate himself from it. And then I think that he just was
crazy
a psychopath. He had some serious issues.
Mental issues, which actually does go back to maybe there was, I mean, not saying that abuse causes mental issues, but it can definitely heighten mental issues that are present.
Yeah.
And if he was sexually assaulted by his sister and he was abused, it is possible that that could have already taken a psychopathic type of mental status and just sent it right on over the edge.
Yeah, I think that with the mixture of just never really getting the whole how to talk to people thing down. That no matter what, his interactions with people were going to be
weird.
They were going to be weird, and the majority of them were going to turn violent. Because, you know, the girl who got away, she was like, he was nice, he was friendly, he seemed unthreatening. And, you know, the way he describes it is that, you know, he was just picking up prostitutes and he was paying for the sex. They had sex. He paid for it. Yeah. But then as they're getting out his vehicle, he gets pissed off and he just shoots them.
He catch him slipping, basically.
And it's just like that part is what I don't get. I don't understand.
And the girl they got away, she wasn't even a prostitute. She was a freaking nurse.
Yeah, she was like a nursing assistant at a children's home. But I think it was like, I think that some of them were like, you know, targets. I think he targeted the prostitutes, and then other people were just victims of opportunity. Yeah, like the Robin girl. She was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Same thing with the nursing assistant. He was driving and saw a chick at a bus stop and was like, "Oh, there goes one." Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely was a sick individual. So want to go into his actual conviction, because he was convicted of his heinous crimes. Yes. First, he was tried in Illinois, and in that time, so his victims that were in Illinois, which there were 3, which were, sorry, one second while I pull them up. He had, one moment, guys. I apologize. My tablet turned closed. Okay. So for his victims in Illinois, he was convicted and given the death penalty. So he had life in, he was basically going to serve until he was executed. But because of a turn of events, because we had a lovely governor named Governor Quinn. Boo. And, you know, he was just concerned about killing people who didn't need to die, but this one definitely needed to go. His sentence was commuted and he was given a life imprisonment sentence. But because he was tried first in Illinois, he then was tried in California. So they extradited him to California to stand trial for his crimes that he committed in California, which were 5 women. For that, he was also sentenced to death. And that happened in 2018, that he was convicted for the 5 murders that happened in Southern California. Once they had given him that death sentence, and he basically, you know, just sat waiting to die. But, however, in November of the same year, there is more, because it just couldn't end there.
Just could not stop.
Could not stop. In November of the same year, on November 2nd, he was found unresponsive in his cell in San Quentin prison. Oh my God. Where he was actually alone. Prison officials said that it was an apparent cause was suicide by hanging.
Trash took itself out.
Right. Or possibly just went ahead and did us a favor and saved taxpayers some dollars. But he died at the age of 54, allegedly at the hands of his own.
Okay, that wraps it for today's episode of Murked in the Midwest. You can find us on Instagram at Murked in the Midwest, exactly how it sounds, as well as our email at murkedinthemidwest@gmail.com. You can send us over case suggestions, questions, comments, concerns, something that you might want to hear on the show in upcoming episodes.
Yes, give us ideas.
Give us ideas. We're very open to that because, you know, we search through and just stop and have a little bit of ADHD going through everything. Right. So we can only pick a few cases at a time. So just let us know and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.